Howdy folks, Brian Cusco here at Triple B. This week we were supposed to have my buddy Sean on from BP Collector, but since Sean has kind of taken a break from social media for a little bit, I figured we'd get back to that interview once he's back and ready so you guys can go find out and see what he's all about. This week we've got my buddy Kane. I was going to do a couple of the Australia interviews that I happened to do while I was out there and get those out while they're still fresh on the trip. If you guys are missing the Australia trip, check out the link down in the description for the vlog channel and you can go catch up. I've put out 2 videos so far and there's 4 more or 5 more to come from that Australia trip yet. So Kane is a snake catcher out in Australia and I thought he had some really interesting information to share, and I also had a really good time riding around with him in the car. Him and his wife were very hospitable. We drove around singing Creedence Clearwater songs up there in Australia, down there in Australia. It was a lot of fun, and Ken's a cool dude. And then I also interviewed Kenan, so he'll be next week. And then also, before we get into this interview, right now there's an auction happening to support the family of Forrest Fanning. There's a link down in the description for that as well. If you guys want to go over there and check that out, I know everybody would really appreciate it. Yeah, but let's jump right into this interview. You're watching Triple B TV. So Kane here has a snake relocation program, or as they call it here in Australia, snake catching program.
Snake catcher.
Snake relocation, basically. People call you up when they have a snake on their property and they're afraid.
Yeah, that's right. So our thing is, I own and operate wild conservation. So our thing is wild snake catchers, and basically people who find a snake on their property who don't want it there and who aren't inclined to kill it, how a lot of people do, they'll actually ring us and say, "G'day, got a snake in my bedroom. Can you come and sort that out for me?" So I'll just head over there and get the snake out of their house or out of their yard, wherever it might be, and we relocate them back into the wild, somewhere away from human habitation, so they're not going to be killed by domestic pets, lawnmowers, shovels, people in thongs, whatever it might be.
People in thongs.
and they're flip-flops.
Oh yeah. Thongs for us a little different than the people in thongs over
here.
here.
I can imagine how funny that might sound. Yeah.
It's not as funny as it looks, promise.
No, that's right.
So how often would you say you get calls for?
Oh, so we get calls every day.
Every day?
Yeah, like you might, some of them just don't come off because people either don't want to pay for the service or they might be too far. Like we get calls from interstate sometimes, people ring and say they've got a snake in their property and they're on the other side of the country, but they've just found you online or on Facebook or whatever it is, and they're not really familiar with where you might be sort of situated. But we definitely get calls every single day. But
where's the furthest that you find yourself traveling to?
Oh well, I mean, like your license sort of restricts you. So like we're restricted to the Sydney basin, but I mean, in saying that, you can still drive 2 hours across Sydney. If you're from the southwest and you've got to go to the north side, then you can still be driving 1.5 hours, 2 hours to do that, and that's why it is a charged service, because you've got to put fuel in the car.
Sure.
You've got to pay for your licensing, your insurance. All snake catchers have to be insured here in Australia, so you need like your public liability and all sorts of things to be able to do it properly. So.
And there's, as far as animals and reptile stuff goes here in Australia, there tends to be some pretty strict regulations.
Yeah, there is strict regulations. Like, I mean, if you're not appropriately licensed, you can't pick up a reptile out of the wild. I mean, you need to have a license to keep reptiles, even captive bred stuff. You're not allowed to collect any wild reptiles, especially in New South Wales. So, like, I know in the States you guys have like a quota, which I imagine here that's a bit like our fishing permits, but you guys can go out and maybe catch 1 or 2 lizards or turtles or whatever it might be if you want them, if they're not federally protected. But here in Australia, everything is federally protected. So all of our native wildlife is protected under the Biodiversity and Conservation Act 2016, which superseded.
Oh, so it's fairly recent.
Yeah, but that supersedes the National Parks Act for '92, I think it was. So prior to '92, it was like the '74 or whatever. So they bring out acts every 20 years or so, and some of the rules they lax on, depending on who's advising at the time. But some of the rules get a lot stricter, and all of a sudden you find yourselves not being able to keep certain species that you were able to before. And I know you guys are going through that at the moment, like with iguanas or your big pythons that you weren't allowed to move across state lines, things like that. I'm not really up on it, but I do see the battles that you guys face over there. And but here it's, our thing here, it's really about education and sort of raising that public awareness that these animals are protected. They do serve a purpose in the ecosystem. We do a lot with freshwater turtles as well. That's why we got on so well with Kenan, So one branch of wild conservation is Turtle Rescues New South Wales, and in that we are going into development sites and removing wildlife from these development sites and relocating them, and primarily it's turtles for us, because we're seeing a lot of wetlands and creeks drained, so that they'll actually pump the water out, fill this lake in and build houses on top of it. So we're losing a lot of habitat, a lot of green space right now, especially in Sydney and in these high growth areas, and we're just seeing roads and shops and houses built on what was once habitat, So and it's also in these new estates that they're building, in these new sort of housing areas, we're actually seeing a lot of snake activity as well, because the snakes are sort of being driven away as they cut the trees down. They build the houses, and then the snakes are slowly making their way back into these new estates, and a lot of the people who live there, they say, where would this snake have come from? Why is there a snake in my yard? And I say, well, it's actually the snake's yard, because 3 months ago this was all bushland, before your house was built, but it is what it is,
Are there different regulations per city, or is it mostly country? It's by state.
Yeah, it's state. Yeah, so if we had a countrywide system, it'd be much better. Especially from like a captive keeping perspective, like countrywide, it'd just be awesome. But like in Queensland, for instance, they can have the emerald tree monitor, the Varanus prassinus, but here in New South Wales, we're not allowed to have it. So we don't have a species code, we call it, on our paperwork. We don't have a species code for the emerald tree monitor, but in Queensland they do. Even though it's only a few hours drive, like especially if you live near the border, the guys across the road can keep that lizard and you're not allowed to. So if they're over state lines, so it's
we even have by city. It kind of depends.
By city, yeah. Which that must be insane.
It can be. I had a buddy in North Dakota who it was illegal to keep snakes in his town. Period. He couldn't keep snakes at all, but he got it turned around.
Yeah, and why is that? Is that a fear thing? Like snakes are evil?
It could have been something. It was something that dated back to like the 1970s, some kind of law that was enacted. I'm sure it had to do. I would be willing to bet that they tried to figure out what it was that initially had started it, but they couldn't quite figure it out because it went back. But he did get it turned around. He started a committee, and he got the law changed.
It might have had some sort of even religious connotation.
That's what he was thinking.
Yeah, because I don't know where Dakota is really, but if it's in that sort of region where they're pretty.
Snakes are the devil.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's controversial to talk about, I guess, there's that sort of thing, and we get it here. Especially like in outback Australia, I guess you'd call it, like the only good snake's a dead snake. That's what they say. That the only good snake's a dead snake, mate. And every snake you see, you got to kill it. And some people, they take it upon themselves. It's like their life's goal to kill snakes. So just yesterday, I saw a post go on Facebook from and he's a Facebook friend of mine. And he put up a photo of a dead brown snake, and he said, me 1, snake 0, because he's out there just killing snakes. And everyone in Australia, they've got some story about how their grandpa or their uncle were chased by a 6-foot king brown, it chased them across the paddock, and
I've heard some stories like that too. From people in California, it was like, chased you, huh?
Yeah, as if snakes are out here actively hunting people or something, but like really, and that's what we're trying to change perspective,
It's just ignorance. Just people don't really know,
and that's all it is. Yeah, it's just and that's what we try and show people, especially when we get to their house and we're catching a snake. And I guess the thing is, if they've called us, they've really taken the first
step in the right direction.
In the right direction, and we get down there and then we can do some public education, and if there's some kids there, all the better, because they're the people who are going to be carrying this message on through their life and sort of spreading that education that we've been able to provide there, so we can tell them what species a snake is, what other species they have in their town, what they might see after school down at the creek, what to do if they find a snake, just just observe it. Just back away and observe it. You don't need to touch it. No one needs to kill it. You don't throw rocks. No one even has to catch it. Don't interact with it, because that's how you get bitten, you know. And if that's what you're scared of, if you're scared of being bitten, don't put yourself in a situation to be bitten, you know, because a lot of the bites here in Australia, and I'm sure it's the same in the States and anywhere in the world, a lot of the bites are on the hand, you know, and it's through that interaction, you know. Someone tried to catch it or kill it. The snake dodged the shovel because it couldn't really see the shovel. It could only see your sort of warmth, warmth. You know, it's sensing your thermal signature, and they go straight past the shovel or whatever weird implement you've grabbed at the time to smack a snake in the head, and it gets you on the hand. You know, and that's where bites happen, unless you are of course working in an undeveloped country.
Sure, there can always be an accidental.
Yeah, of course. But I mean, here in Australia, there's not many, like, I stepped on a snake and it bit me on the ankle. There's not many stories like that.
I think that's a pretty rare occurrence.
Yeah, every story you hear, it was some dude trying to smack a snake in the head, or, you know, or Uncle Jim tried to catch it and it got him, you know, and that's it. That's what happens. Yeah.
Good, man. Well, you guys are going to start, you have your channel going right now? Are you going to start
doing
some more videos
I mean, we don't do a great
maybe
deal.
not anymore.
No, that's right.
Channel's
Not
over.
after dropping the old GoPro. But no, we don't do a great deal on YouTube, but all of our stuff's through Facebook, really. I mean, that's sort of how we reach our audience.
So people here in Australia are trying to find snake catching
they can
services?
They can just type in wild snake catchers or wild conservation or turtle rescues New South Wales, and they'll definitely find us.
Okay.
We're on there. We're usually covered in mud, catching turtles, or we're covered in mud catching snakes. You know, it doesn't matter. We're covered in mud. So. It's Australia.
Right on, man. Well, we'll put this up there and we'll get some stuff out there, bro.
Yeah, well, thanks so much, man. It's been so cool spending time with you.
Yeah, man, it's been fun.
Letting our hair down.
Nice little laughs yesterday.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Some good laughs.
Yeah, it's been sick.
Thank you guys for watching. Thank you again, Kane, for your time. There are links down in the description for all of Kane's information, how you can get a hold of him, especially if you're in Australia and need somebody to come remove a snake off your property. That stuff is all down there. Next week, we're going to be sitting down with Mr. Kenan Harkin of Camp Kenan. And until then, you've been watching Triple B TV. Y'all take care. Ow! Labap. Triple B TV. Sean, Kane, Kenan, Kevin, Auction.